Hello Internet. So in this video we're going to be reviewing the RfloXa front fork meant for your Suran or Talaria. Now, as you have already seen, there are quite a few videos reviewing this fork by different bloggers, and like I decided to make my own video because I thought that those videos were slightly lacking in some more details and technical stuff. Now, those bloggers would talk, how awesome the fork is, how amazing it feels. Some of them will show you the install process, which actually will not be doing in this video, but they don't show or discuss this fork much in detail, how it is made, what it is made of, what are the cool things about the way it's made, and what are the not so cool things. And so I decided to make a video of my own where I'll be doing a more of a picky, nitty-gritty, detailed initial review of the fork. This means I will not be riding this fork, nor will I be installing it. This might be a different video later, but the whole point of this video is just to show you the fork in detail and tell what I like about this and maybe other things that I see could have been improved. Alright, so let's go by having a look quickly what we get in the box. So as you can see, the box is already open. On top, you have your owner's manual, which we'll untouch later, and also the factory inspection sheet. So this is quite nice that they include that. You make sure that the fork was inspected from the factory. And later on, I had discovered some signs that indeed everything seems fine, which I'll talk about later. Anyways, moving on. So, as you see, there's a foam box, very well packed, and we have all the pieces here. So, first off, let's start. We have our front axle here. And now on this front axle, this piece here is the end cap for the front wheel, because I'll talk later why they've included this and also why this was not the best decision in my opinion. Anyways, moving on. So here we have the big upper triples. Very well done. And I'll be showing those parts in more detail later, and yeah, talking about them. This is just a general review. So next we have here, it's this piece. So now this piece is your disc brake spacer. And yeah, later I'll tell you why they use this. And this is quite a very well done piece. I like it very much. They also include 2 sets of screws for this. And I'll explain later why there are 2 sets. And finally, of course, we have the fork itself. Now, let me just gently lay it here. So this is the entire fork. The lower triples are already attached to it, which is a nice thing, but they will need to be moved a bit during the install. So, the question is, which fork is this? Now, specifically, this fork is the Hawk31 Max version in gold, obviously. So, the reason comes, why did I choose the Max version? And what does Max actually stand for? Because actually, both the regular, the Pro, and the Max version, they utilize exactly the same fork legs with exactly the same insides. What differs from version to version are the triple clamps. And when it comes to the Max version, the triple clamp here is actually wider than on a regular fork. And also, if we look here, sorry for this. If we look here on the upper triple, we can see that there is a drop, meaning that the clamps for the forks are lower than the clamp for the steering tube of the fork, the stem, sorry. Let me just set up the camera stationary here, and we're gonna be talking more in detail. All right, so question is, why have they chosen this type of design? Why is it needed? Well, the thing is, the wider triples give you a bit more stability, but more important than that, with the combination of a drop crown, they allow you to fit bigger and fatter front wheels. Specifically, the 21-inch front wheel. Now, I myself mostly ride trail. I have a Talaria Sting. I have installed a 21-inch front wheel to the front, and I really enjoy it. However, the problem with that is that at full compression, it does rub against the fender. Also, the gaps, between the tire and the legs and the sides are quite small. I mean, but it's okay as long as your wheel is true. You won't gonna have any problems. Maybe if it gets like a little bit warped, it might start rubbing. But anyway, so this kind of design that they implemented here gets rid of all those problems. Now, what they did is that they have made this whole the gap between the two fork legs 16 millimeters wider. I will show you now on the measurements. So the spacing on a regular fork is 110 millimeters. That means that between two fork legs, you're going to have, let's flip them. It's going to be better for measurement. Right, so between two fork legs. Oops. Oh, good reactions. Called it on time. Okay, carrying on. All right, so normally the gap between the two fork legs is 110 millimeters. However, if we take it here and if we go ahead and measure this gap here, make sure that they're sitting flush. All right, should be about that much. And we are getting 126. So this means plus extra 16 meters. That means plus extra 8 millimeters of clearance on the side. Now, because of this design, they need to first of all use this piece. Now, this piece, as I've mentioned before, is a disc brake spacer. Because the lugs the lugs here for your brake caliper, they're still in the same place, and the distance was increased by 8 millimeters on each side. They needed to make a piece that is, sorry for this, yes, let's measure, that is 8 millimeters thick. So if we look here, and well, I measured about 8.3, but I measured it before, so I had 8 millimeters, and which is logical because 8 millimeters would be half of the distance. That means that your front wheel will stay centered in the fork in relation to the entire bike. Now, the front axle, therefore, has to also be longer for this whole thing to work, and they just provide you a longer front axle. Now, this is a so-called floating front axle. So this means that if you look at this end is actually thicker, all right? And this is the main part, which is 20 millimeters in diameter. This, I believe, is 24. Now, it's called floating axle because before you tighten all the bolts when installing, the wheel, it can actually float, and it has to. Like if you watch the RfloXa version of the installation process, they will show you. And yeah, once you got rid of all the tension by pumping the fork, like by pressing in the fork a few times, the axle will set in the correct place, and then you can fix it. So this is a floating axle. And now, because the distance has increased, they also provide you this piece. This is the end cap on the side of your front wheel. So I'm going to show you now the wheel. So this is my actually my 21-inch front wheel. Sorry for that. And so this is meant to replace this end cap on the, disc brake side of the fork. Okay, this is where we have the first issue with this whole fork. Because, when I saw this, I already had doubts. Will this fit into my wheel or not? Now, of course, I believe this piece is made to fit the factory, like OEM Suron and Talaria front wheels, because, they kind of all use the same standard, and the hubs, as far as I know, were identical. However, the problem is here, and this is kind of, in my understanding, like a design flaw of the whole thing and lack of research. So, when do you make a fork that is max version that is intended to have bigger wheels, 21-inch wheels? Now, those wheels will typically always be custom-made wheels, which means that they will also most likely will have different hubs when compared to the OEM wheels. Now, the wheel I've just showed you quickly, this is the Milk Racing 21-inch wheel. And I have already taken the measurements of the end cap. So here, at the widest part of the front cap, it measures about 31.4 millimeters. However, the same front cap on the Milk Racing wheel is narrower. It's about 28 millimeters. And so, of course, this end cap cannot physically properly fit into my 21-inch wheel. And this was the whole point. You get this fork because you want to fit a bigger wheel. Yet you cannot really utilize the end cap they provide you. Now, what could be the solution to that? Well, I have two solutions. One is temporary that I will just use for the installation of the fork, and one is the permanent, but I'm still waiting for the piece because, I just recently found out this issue, so ordered the piece right away, but it's gonna take a while before it reaches me from AliExpress. So let's start by showing you the temporary solution. So this is normally, imagine this is your standard, this is the end cap on your custom wheel rod is here. So what I'm gonna do as a temporary solution, so I'm going to use thick O-rings like that, and they measure about 4 millimeters in cross section. So when you get two of them, you get 8 millimeters. And so at the end of this will be sitting like this. Could also show you perhaps a better demonstration would be to do it in the fork itself. Now, as this rubber, of course, this is not a great solution because also rubber tends to compress, tends to break, and overall not a very reliable thing. So let me show you here. I'll be putting this on the fork. So this will be, imagine that this is the end cap of your wheel. Now, here we go. Putting another one. And now, all right, let us fit the front axle. Now, one thing about fitting the front axle, you have to make sure that this is exactly parallel, exactly flush, so they're exactly on the same height. Now it comes to this specific fork, and I'll touch later about its characteristics. So the damper has a bit of move here. Here we go. So you see I had to pull it out a little bit. It got in the right place, and now we're in. So it's gonna look something like this, right? Those two things will fill the 8 millimeter. Let's have a closer look here. This will, work as an 8 millimeter spacer. However, I have ordered like a bushing sleeve from AliExpress that is 20 millimeters internal diameter, I think 23 external, and 8 millimeters long. So exactly what I need. But I'm going to include the link for that piece. So if you're in the same situation like me, it'll be an easier solution because it took me a while before I found the right bushing sleeve on AliExpress, but I was able to do it, and now it's on its way. All right. So, next thing I wanted to touch here on the fork itself. And I think for this, we'll take the fork like this. So, as you can see, they already have, the lower bearing pre-installed on it. And this is actually a very nice thing, very nice feature. I only wish I would have known about it before ordering the fork, because I have assumed that the fork will come with no bearing installed in it. And what I did to be on the safe side, I've ordered a separate set of bearings, which they also happen to sell on their website. So that was kind of like an indication for me, that you need to order one. Of course, you can reuse the bearing that's already on your previous fork. Thing is, it's quite pressed there, and honestly, it's a bit of a hassle to taking it off. And considering the fork there was a long time and the bearing was used, I thought, if I'm changing the whole thing, I might as well just, get a new lower bearing. We'll keep using the upper one. So I've ordered the set. We've got the entire set coming here. Now this is the upper bearing, and then also I've got the lower bearings here and the lower bearing cup as well. Thing is, I'm not really gonna need this whole thing now, because the lower bearing is already here. And let's just open this up. And the upper bearing, I will just reuse it from my previous forks. So in the end, it turned out no need. The only thing that I will use from this is the star nut, right? I do have a spare star nut somewhere, but if they provide it, so I'm gonna use it. Now, there's one more thing I wanted to touch in this lower bearing. So let me just put all this back. All right. So one more thing about the lower bearing here. It does come with grease already, so it is greased from the factory. You can feel it when you touch it and when you spin it. However, I think that the amount of grease here is insufficient. And when you're going to be installing the fork, you will have to put the grease in the bearing cap. Now, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna clean this bearing from grease entirely. Well, because I don't want to risk mixing two greases, and maybe they will start forming some kind of reaction. You never know what they use. You cannot tell. So just to avoid this potential risk, I will just make this bearing grease free, clean it entirely, and then re-grease it. And of course, same goes, for the upper bearing. Just clean all the grit from it before installing. Now, next thing. So we're gonna look here. So at the front of the upper portion of the fork, and add the adjusters here. So this is quite well done. You have two things here. So this is your left side. It looks to the right, but this is the left side. So this is where the spring is. So this fork leg, the only thing it has is a spring in it, and has no hydraulics. Well, it has oil. It should have oil in it for lubrication purposes, for the lowest to slide in the bushings inside the leg. But yeah, no hydraulics. There's just a spring, and here we have a spring preload. Now, RfloXa state that there is a 10mm preload adjustment, and this here is your air out screw. Basically, this is a venting screw, because when forks, compress repeatedly in a fast way, they do trap some extra air, so the pressure builds up, and every now and then you have to release, so this is what it's for. Moving on to the right leg here. So this is your rebound adjustment. Has 18 clicks. And this is quite well done. I like how they did the whole thing. There is only one gripe regarding this. And RfloXa, if you're watching this, I'm addressing you now. Now, the sizing of the stop caps on the legs, it's 42 millimeters. This is a very rare size, and it's not easy to get this. And moreover, you cannot just get any socket that is 42 millimeters because these are quite thin. So if we look like this, see, it's only about, let's say, 4 millimeters. So you need a nice socket or a key, huge hex key with with the flush ends, not tapered like as commonly sockets have. And those are quite hard to get. And my question to RfloXa is, if you're selling such an expensive fork, and you add you put all these extras, and it's a nice fork, why don't you simply include a nice 42 millimeter special wrench that you have, guys, that you show in one of your videos? Now, this would be a small touch, but this would show that you care about the customers and that you appreciate them because, eventually these forks will need to be serviced. And there are many things you can do on the fork, but the most simple thing with these forks, this is, by the way, this is an open cartridge fork, meaning that oil in the cartridge and the oil in your lowers is actually connected. So you can change, the entire oil by opening this top cap here and then replacing the oil. And it would be so nice if RfloXa would have included the special tool to open this, because this is something difficult to get. And I'm sure for them, one tool, it's a small aluminum, flat wrench, that would just cost a few bucks, but it would be such a nice touch, and show that they actually, want to provide a luxury product for their customers as they claim. All right, now moving on to the other side of the forks here. So we can see here, this is where our compression adjustment happens. Now, there are two adjusters here. The one on the top here is the low speed compression, and it goes in clicks. I think I've counted 14, so click, click, and back. However, there's also a second adjustment here, and that is the high speed compression adjustment. And this is like the dial here. So when you turn it in, you increase the pressure on the base valve. There's a spring that pressing all the the valving there, the shims. Right, and the other way around, this is how you open the low high-speed compression, so make the fork softer. And you saw perhaps that the red dialer for the low-speed compression was twisting together with the high-speed, but in fact I've checked, and it is only the dial itself that twists, but the rod doesn't twist, the amount of clicks stayed the same, so all good there. Now, moving up the fork, we have the stanchions. They are coated, aluminum stanchions coated. I don't know what the coating is exactly. It has a bit of gold, color to it, but definitely not Kashima. Well, so time will show if the coating is good and strong, but looks similar to the coatings on other forks. Now, moving on. So this is the lower triples of the triple tree, and I like how they're done very much. The surface is all anodized. The finish is really good. Sorry if you can see fine lines here. The other thing I like about this, so if we look here, sorry, here we go. So we have our torque spec values indicated here, which is between 11 and 12 Newton meters. But the nicest part, other than the torque values, you can see the 3 screws at the bottom. But most folks, commonly just have 2. So this is done, this will add rigidity. This will prevent your forks from twisting. And so this is all very good. The only complaint I have, however, about the lower triples, it does not have this tab that you use for steering lock. Now, initially when ordering the fork, I did not notice that because previously I was checking the Pro model that has a very similar triple, only that it is not extended. And that one had a tab for the steering lock. So I thought, yeah, this one should have as well. However, when I got the fork, I opened it up, I got kind of disappointed. There's no tab, and I don't understand why RfloXa didn't add it to this particular model. I don't think, there's anything that really stopping from the technical point. Maybe if I'm wrong, RfloXa, you can comment on that. But yeah, kind of a little bit of a disappointment, but definitely not a deal breaker here. All right, so we've touched. Now let's have a closer look at the upper triples as well. So just to show you how nicely they're made. All right, so it's a billet aluminum piece, just as the lowers. Nice black bolts, anodized finishing, RfloXa written here. And another nice feature, just as commonly now on the upper triples, you have just one pinch bolt here for the stanchions, for the legs. However, they have to, again, increase rigidity, This is something really nice, and this is something I really love. And I have measured the drop on this thing, and the drop turned out to be 17 millimeters. So not a big drop. Like I know Fast Days, you can buy upper triples with, I think like an inch drop, which is 25 millimeters. So this one has only 17. Yeah, but that should probably be enough, to clear the front wheel from the fender. I will find that, in testing. Also, talk a little bit about the spring rates here. Now, these forks do come in 3 different spring rates, which are the 45 spring, the 55 spring. Sorry, so I guess I'm wrong. The thing is 45, 60, and the progressive 45 to 60. Now, I went with the progressive spring rate. The idea behind this decision is that I'm hoping to achieve a bit of a more supple feel on the top of the stroke to improve small bump compliance, but also to have enough bottom out resistance, which is of course important. Yeah, so I'm gonna try this out and see how this works. I'm quite a big guy, about 95 kilos with the whole gear. My bike is a bit on the heavier side as well due to larger front wheel and some accessories that I've added. But yeah, let's see how that works. Hopefully it will be the right spring rate. And if not, I can always change it. Now, I've promised you that we'll also get back to the owner's manual. Here we go. So I read the entire thing, right? And because, you want to know what the manufacturer tells you about the product, and so I read the entire thing, and some of it, a lot of it is just disclaimers, and warranty related stuff and so on. They do explain you how to what each of the adjustment does, which is a good thing. However, unfortunately, this owner's manual I found to be lacking in some information that I was really hoping to find. And the main information I was hoping to find in the owner's manual was actually the amounts of oil that go into each leg and the type of oil used. Now, as I said, eventually you will need to do the service of this fork, and the most basic and the most common service you can do is changing the oil in the fork. And unfortunately, they do not specify here how much oil goes into each leg and what type of oil. Now, with RfloXa, again, you make this owner's manual, and this is something that normally all manufacturers include in their owner's manual. Why don't you add this information? Now, in your video, I know that for the damper side leg, you do need to add 300 millimeters or milliliters of fork oil, which is good, but you don't even specify the weight. I'm assuming it's 5 weight, but who knows? Maybe you're using a thicker or thinner oil, not sure. And no information about the spring side leg, how much oil to put there. If the thing allows, I'll probably also go with 300 mil, but you need to see how much air is left once, you fill the fork completely. So I wish they could have included this information. It would be very useful. Now, another thing about this one is, there was one piece of information that I found quite confusing and I think wrong. So they go on explaining how to measure your riding sag, meaning with the rider being on the bike, and then in the manual they state that the desired sag for the rider is between 15 to 35 millimeters. Now, on the front fork with the 200 millimeters of travel, that translates from 7.5 to 17.5%. And I don't know if you've ever worked with forks, if you set up forks, you know that most manufacturers recommend about 25% sag for the longer travel version forks, which this is. Now this is 200 mil, and so the 25% would be about 50 mil. And I think if you get a sag of let's say 35, and they say that's already quite on the stiff side, so the fork might be a bit oversprung for you. And if you get a sag of only 15 millimeters, well, that's very heavily oversprung, and your ride will be very bumpy. The small bump compliance will be all gone. It's going to be too harsh, no good. So I don't know why RfloXa suggests this information. I think they should probably revisit this, or maybe if you guys watching this, please leave a comment to explain me why this is the right sag for this fork. I'm quite interested to hear on this. Okay, and finally we're getting to the end of this video. So hopefully it was interesting for you. Hopefully you've learned some some small details on this fork and now when ordering you can make a decision. As mentioned previously, I will include the link for the spacing sleeve that I will be using on the axle in the description of this video. And yeah, guys, if you like this video, just drop me a comment and let me know what you think. Right, thank you so much for watching this and wishing you a good day. Bye.